Good morning, everyone, and I'll add my thanks to you all for coming and taking the time to join us while Rebecca's setting up. Thank you. So I'm Nick Johansson. I'm Director at the Kent Downs Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty. I'm hoping to introduce you a little bit more in depth, I guess, to the place and the extraordinary character and quality and the distinctiveness. Why the Kent Downs is different from other parts of Britain and why we're so lucky. And as I was listening to Rebecca's presentation, I was thinking, do you know what? We're so lucky. We've got this incredible landscape, and actually at the moment we've got an amazing team working with all these wonderful businesses we've engaged to try and share that and to make sustainable businesses out of that. So this golden cycle of sustainable business supporting the landscape that supports a business. That's what we're trying to do. So I'll talk a little bit about AONB and put it in the context of our wonderful suite of national landscapes. So areas of outstanding natural beauty, national parks, all created in that incredible post-war, why did we do all of that? What was that about? And this real visceral need to conserve the beauty that in a sense, was being fought for, these amazing places. The committee that set up national parks and areas of outstanding natural beauty was working in the last 2 years of the Second World War. This was something that was seen as a national priority, even in those terrible years. So we have this suite of national parks and areas of outstanding natural beauty, all there to do broadly the same things, all with the same quality of landscape, but just with different governance and funding arrangements. So we're one of the areas of outstanding natural beauty down here, as you know, in the collection of national parks. The largest of the AONB is the Cotswolds. Isles of Scilly is the smallest. We're one of the larger ones, but by far the most beautiful. So about the Kent Downs, that's the extent in Kent, that's our map. The High Weald AONB also extends into Kent. It is a large area, one of the largest of the nation's areas of outstanding natural beauty. And it's not uniform, it extends from the amazing crashing cliffs at Dover to Toys Hill and into even the London Borough of Bromley. So when we think about sense of place and character and quality of this landscape, it's not consistent across the whole 900 square kilometres. It differs, and in around Sevenoaks it's very different to how it is around the East Kent Downs. And that's what we need to understand and grab and celebrate, because that is that's really part of its importance. So why do we have areas of outstanding natural beauty, for that matter, national parks? How much government legislation talks about beauty? We are here to conserve and enhance natural beauty. And that's a really important thing, to think about the beauty of the landscape, because that is what we're about. And I'll talk a little bit about landscape, the complexity of landscape, but that definition there talks a little bit about it. Beauty is not just what you see. Landscape is not just what you see. It's much deeper and much more important, much more joyful than that in many ways. So supporting that primary purpose to conserve and enhance the natural beauty, and this is where the sustainable rural tourism and our work with farmers and foresters and communities comes in, is to support the social and economic well-being of the communities, both within and outside the Kent Downs, and the needs of business, farming and forestry, but in a way that goes back to that primary purpose. So it's always that golden thread back, as Rebecca said, back to conserving and enhancing natural beauty. That's what we're here to do. So if we're doing something that isn't doing that, we shouldn't be doing that. So I spoke a little bit about landscape, and landscape and sense of place are really closely entwined in how you think about landscape. And whether you can read that, I'm not sure. But it's not just what you see. A colleague of mine once described landscape as not just what you see, but how you understand what you see as well. And I was thinking about it on one of my lunchtime walks. I live in Saltwood, and I walked past the amazing Saltwood Castle, and I thought, if that had been built by a billionaire and it was exactly the same building, looked exactly the same, but it didn't have the story of the knights staying over there on their way to murder Thomas à Becket, the history and heritage and the depth, it could, it would be meaningless. It would be a carbuncle in an otherwise beautiful valley. But because it has that deep time depth and historic and stories around it, is an extraordinary place. So it's not just what you see, it's how you understand what you see. And it's this amazing landscape, it's this amazing combination of people and place, of the natural heritage, our soils, the smell of the soil as you pick it up, the landform, the geology, the chalk underlying, the way our buildings, the hue of the brick comes from the type of clay that we work in. The hue of the downs, the colour of the grass is because of where we are in England, and because of the soils underneath the grass, and because it's chalk grassland, and by the sea it's because there's a salt-laden air. It's all different and distinct because of a myriad of components. So it's about the natural, the cultural and social, that's around the, what's the history of farming? How was farmland inherited? How were farms created and woodlands cleared? What's the underlying soil? Why is the Kent Downs so wooded? Well, the soils on the tops of the downs are clay with flint. No one in their right mind would plough that stuff before the advent of large tractors. So it's a very wooded landscape because it was no good to grow crops on. And then it's the perceptual and aesthetic. So thinking about the scientists, the artists, when you think about Henry Moore's incredible forms, maybe you can read into that the flowing chalk downs. Henry Moore lived in Kingston at the Elam Valley, and it was there that he started to create maquettes of those extraordinary flowing figures, which were inspired by the form and shape of the downs. So when we think about sense of place, that sense of place has taken thousands and thousands of years and hundreds of people to form, and different people's perceptions, different artists, different individuals, different, down to the detail of how a hedge was laid in the past. A different hedge layer would have a different approach. The carpenter on an ancient building would have a different mark. So at every level there's a depth, and what we need to do if we are going to conserve and enhance our landscapes, we need to understand that, and we need to be sensitive to it, we need to celebrate it, and in interventions we make, we reflect and respect that for the future. So we talk, when we describe a landscape like the Kent Downs, in terms of landform and landscape character. Landscape character is a process to clearly describe the landscape before you and also dig into those cultural connections. Let's go through the downs and think about this amazing chalk scarp, rich in wildlife, but also when you think about Kent, that is the pilgrimage route, that is the route from Britain to mainland Europe. Everyone, if you were going to head towards Dover, before there were road signs, there was a chalk scarp, and that's the route that everyone follows. If you think about the M20 and the A2, they're both ancient routes. They've just been concreted over and covered in lorries. So as you travel along those routes, you are travelling routes long followed. And then if you travel along the North Downs Way, you're walking in the footsteps of pilgrims. So the form of the landscape, this grain and pattern of a landscape, is a very much part of what is the Kent Downs, very part of the history and heritage of this peninsular county. We of course have the White Cliffs Heritage Coasts, the heritage coast between Folkestone and Dover and Kingsdown. Rebecca's already mentioned the accolade through Lonely Planet, the only UK mention in 2022 Lonely Planet Global Guide. Heritage coasts have the same kind of level of recognition, and our heritage coasts lie with it both within the Kent Downs AONB. And they are of international importance for their wildlife, for their history and story, for their... Why am I going the wrong way? For their geological exposures. And we are currently working through another Interreg funded project to try and create an international cross-channel global UNESCO global geopark, such that the whole of the Kent Downs and all of its amazing geology and landform and landscape character, along with the Strait of Dover and the undersea character and the Parc Naturel, the Capimari de Pal, becomes a single UNESCO landscape designation, a global geopark. So that's another one of our projects. The softer forms of the limb escarpment, the river valleys, and the green sand ridge. So the Kent Downs isn't only about chalk. We extend a little bit down into the Romney Marsh along the limb escarpment and the green sand ridge. And of course our three main river valleys are deeply beautiful and characterful and rich areas also. The post-glacial landscape of Britain created many of these what are now dry valleys, these very soft, gentle valleys. So behind the steep scarp, these gentle sloping dry valleys, sometimes with a winterbourne, sometimes with a stream in when it rains. These are again deeply characterful. They often, I mentioned the woodlands, they often have woodlands scope around the top, very rich woodlands, and where there is undisturbed chalk grassland, as you can see in some of these, a very diverse, beautifully scented downland, which has plants in it and insects and animals which we find only in Kent. These are at a detailed level distinct because there are plants that are found here, mainly because of our proximity to mainland Europe, that haven't yet extended into the rest of Britain, but may well. So I'm going the wrong way, aren't I? So I talked a little bit about, in that last slide, about the biodiversity, and we are one of the most biodiverse landscapes in Britain. As I said, it's partly because of where we are, and it's partly because of our soil type and our history of land management. But this orchid here, the lady orchid, which is featured in our logo, it is distinct in Britain because it is in the Kent Downs that nearly every lady orchid in Britain lives. There's a little outlier in Oxfordshire, don't know what they're doing there, but pretty much all of the lady orchids in Britain, and they are the most exquisitely beautiful orchid, lives in the Kent Downs. We have whole fields of these things, and maybe with climate change they will be moving across, and there's another project we're working on called Big Chalk about connecting these amazing chalk landscapes so that wildlife can move as climates change. Thinking of biodiversity, then the other characteristics that we talked about, the coast obviously has its own individual important wildlife. Also important in terms of a landing point for migratory species. And then we have chalk streams in the Kent Downs, as I know at least one person in this audience knows well. And there are only a few hundred, less than 150 chalk streams in the globe. So we haven't got as many as some of the other chalk landscapes, but what we have is extraordinary and beautiful, and again, distinctive. So I've talked about the chalk habitat of the chalk streams and the downlands and the woods. We also have, where there are other soils, you get areas of heath and of acid woodlands. And again, it's different, it's distinct, and it is distinct in Kent. It is at a quite a subtle level. The species and the species assemblages and the historic management of those is different. So places like Stelling Minnis Common, not far from here, it has western gorse. So that's not something you find in the east of Britain, but there it is, growing up in this common, a landscape formed by hundreds of years of commoning. All throughout the rest of Britain, they're called commons. In Kent, they're called minnisses. Again, this sense of place, this little story. We are a landscape of fruit growing, hops and horticulture, and increasingly viticulture. And so it's not a static thing, this sense of place. It's something that changes over time, and if you're careful and thoughtful, that change can be well judged so that you retain a sense of place and character. So our orchards, there's a document, we're very rich in historic orchards, but actually the modern orchards are expanding. We have on our arable fields remnants of incredibly rare wildflowers. Ranscombe Reserve, the most important arable wildflower reserve in the country. So even on what might be seen as the deserts of arable land, there's very important nature around us. And again, that all links back, it's not only the nature, it links back to the people, the place, the culture, the historic management. Our woodlands and trees, the Kent Downs is one of the most wooded landscapes in Britain. Again, that's around the soil type, the historic management, even the inheritance patterns in Kent as compared with other parts of Britain and the clearances. So our woods, we have large areas of beech yew woodland, again very rare. If you're driving along the M20 around Maidstone, you see these dark hanging yew trees with beech around, very dark. So again, it might be familiar to us, but it's not a habitat that you find in many places in Britain. And once more, like I've worked in many counties in Britain, but when you walk into a Kentish woodland in spring, the display of orchids, particularly the bluebells, are much like other areas, but the displays of orchids, the diversity of the wildflowers there, way above what you get elsewhere. We are very lucky. Historic and cultural heritage, and this wonderful concept of time depth. So understanding that what you see is the story of hundreds and thousands of years of what's the patterns and activities of people and nature over years. So our flint churches, our chalk block churches where that occurs, the Kitts Coty standing stones, the castles and the villages and the routeways, the pattern and grain of the landscape. Again, that's connected between the grazing patterns between the Kent Downs and the High Weald. Something that is distinct, different, very much a Kent Downs thing which you won't find elsewhere. Underneath all of this, perhaps more technically, the chalk creates this incredible reservoir of water which provides 3/4 of our drinking water. And the place this landscape has in our future in terms of simple things like water supply, but also climate mitigation is really important. But something that, when we think about the natural resources, this concept of tranquility and remoteness, that's something that we offer not in the same way that Northumberland does, but tranquility is very much a relative concept. And we offer incredible relative tranquility in the Kent Downs, given the busy part of the world that we live in. And that is one of the most valued when we ask people who live in and around the AONB. It's the tranquility and remoteness, which is one of the most important things. So that supports the underlying quality of life that this place offers to people who live here, the very lucky people, nearly 100,000 people are lucky enough to live in the Kent Downs, but also well over 1 million people within a kilometre of the boundary of the Kent Downs. So we have this huge, often very urban population nearby, and providing sustainably and carefully a place for them to enjoy and experience what many people who live here enjoy and experience is one of the tasks for us all. And if you're a clever business, you can make a buck out of it as well.